When you think about making an avoidantly attached individual chase you, you have to understand this is not a game, it's not manipulation, it's psychological alignment with the truth of their internal world, and it's a test of your own emotional sovereignty. Avoidantly attached individuals long for connection just as much as anyone else, but for them, intimacy feels dangerous. They grew up often unconsciously associating closeness with suffocation, demands, or inevitable disappointment. When you interact with an avoidant, the most powerful move you can make is to become a source of emotional safety without applying pressure. This is not an easy balance to strike because it demands both profound empathy and disciplined self-restraint. To become emotionally safe for an avoidant means that you offer presence without insistence. You listen without interrogating. You care without clinging. You accept without trying to control. This requires you to regulate your own needs internally rather than turning the relationship into the solution for your emotional states. Avoidants are exquisitely sensitive to being needed too much. They interpret it as a threat, as a kind of invisible net trying to pull them in before they are ready. What draws them closer is not someone who chases, but someone who simply is. Someone who embodies emotional strength, patience, and warmth without turning it into a transaction. Pressure, on the other hand, makes them shut down almost instantly. Even subtle signals, questions like, "Where is this going?" or "Why aren't you responding faster?" activate their defensive patterns. They experience pressure as a loss of freedom, and freedom is their highest value. But when you remove that pressure and replace it with genuine acceptance, you become a rare presence in their life, someone who can coexist with their emotional pacing without demanding constant proof of affection or validation. This is not about abandoning your own needs or desires. It's about understanding timing and respect. Your emotional safety is not just for them, it is for you. When you learn to sit comfortably with uncertainty, to tolerate the spaces in conversation, to accept slower emotional development, you also strengthen your own attachment system. You move from anxious to secure, from reactive to responsive. Small actions reinforce this emotional safety. Respond to their outreach warmly but without intensity. Validate their emotions when they share them, no matter how small. Don't probe or pressure them to go deeper before they are ready. Communicate your care in a way that allows them the freedom to move toward you voluntarily, rather than feeling yanked toward you out of guilt or fear. This creates a paradoxical effect. The safer an avoidant feels around you, the less they feel the need to run. The more you respect their space without resentment, the more they begin to associate closeness with safety rather than danger. Over time, you rewire their unconscious expectations of intimacy. You offer them an experience of connection that does not come with the hidden cost of self-abandonment. Becoming a source of emotional safety without pressure is not passive. It is a form of quiet, powerful leadership. You lead not by pushing or pulling, but by embodying the security that they, deep down, have always wished they could trust. Strategic distance is not about playing games or manipulating emotions. It's about understanding the psychological wiring of the avoidantly attached mind and responding to it with intelligence and self-respect. For an avoidant, closeness often triggers feelings of being trapped or overwhelmed, even when they deeply care about the person they are with. If you lean in too hard, they instinctively lean away. If you give them space, genuine, calm, unapologetic space, you create an environment where their natural fear of loss can begin to override their fear of closeness. Strategic distance is rooted in a deep emotional truth. We value what we fear losing. When you are constantly available, constantly reaching out, constantly making emotional labor easy for them, they don't feel the natural consequences of emotional distance. In fact, they may take you for granted without even realizing it. But when you step back, not with anger, not with bitterness, but with quiet dignity, You change the emotional equation. You allow absence to do what presence could not. You allow them to feel your value through your absence. This does not mean going cold or disappearing to punish them. Punishment still carries emotional charge, and avoidance are highly attuned to feeling controlled. Strategic distance is about resetting the balance of energy between you. It means being gracious and warm when they do reach out, but not chasing when they don't. It means living a full, meaningful life that does not orbit around their availability or attention. It means being willing to lose them rather than losing yourself in the process of trying to hold them close. There's a psychological law at work here. Tension creates value. If you are always emotionally leaning toward them, there's no tension, no space for longing or curiosity to develop. Strategic distance introduces just enough uncertainty to ignite the part of them that wonders about you, that misses your energy, that starts to question whether you will still be there if they delay too long. It activates the avoidance, suppressed need for connection, not by force, but by allowing their emotional system to recognize what it stands to lose. The most difficult part of mastering strategic distance is managing your own emotional anxiety. You have to become comfortable with discomfort. You have to learn that feeling uneasy does not mean you are doing something wrong. Growth feels like fear before it feels like freedom. Every time you resist the impulse to chase, every time you hold your ground and stay rooted in your own life, you reinforce to yourself that your well-being is not dependent on their immediate validation. Strategic distance is not silence for silence's sake. It is presence within yourself. It is choosing to live fully, even when someone else's emotional availability is uncertain. It is the discipline of knowing that you are valuable, whether or not someone else recognizes it today, tomorrow, or ever. And it is through this distance, paradoxically, that you create the only true path for an avoidant to chase, not because you demanded it, but because you became strong enough to no longer need it. One of the most critical mistakes people make when dealing with an avoidantly attached person is trying to impose their own emotional pace onto the relationship. Driven by anxiety or fear of loss, they push for faster closeness, clearer communication, or deeper commitment, long before the avoidant is ready. What this does, however, is trigger the avoidance defense system and make them retreat even further. The real psychological power lies in mirroring their emotional pace, not yours, so that connection can develop organically and safely. Has worked. Avoidants live by a deeply ingrained rule. Emotional closeness must be carefully controlled to prevent being overwhelmed. They need time, space, and a sense of autonomy at every step. If you move faster than they are ready for, they perceive it not as love, but as a threat to their independence. Even well-intentioned expressions of affection can feel suffocating if not attuned to their state of readiness. This is why mirroring their emotional pace is so essential. It signals that you see them, that you respect their boundaries, and that you are capable of emotional regulation yourself. To mirror an avoidance pace requires immense emotional discipline. It means if they pull back, you pull back too. Not as punishment, not to manipulate, but simply because you are matching their rhythm. If they initiate contact sporadically, you respond warmly, but without overwhelming them. If they show interest, you meet that interest equally, without overcompensating with too much eagerness or intensity. The goal is not to mirror their avoidance, but to mirror their tempo, walking beside them instead of sprinting ahead and dragging them forward. Doing this well requires you to attune yourself to their subtle cues, not just their words. Avoidants are often indirect with their feelings. They may not verbalize their fears or needs openly, but you can observe their patterns, their timing, their level of disclosure, their responsiveness. You match that not to shrink yourself or hide your own desires, but to build trust by showing you are willing to let the relationship unfold naturally without force. This approach also protects your own emotional integrity. Instead of constantly being disappointed by unmet expectations, you adjust your expectations to the reality of who they are and where they are emotionally. You do not suppress your feelings, but you channel them wisely. You recognize that authentic connection cannot be rushed. Trust, especially with an avoidant, is earned not through demands, but through consistent, patient presence. By mirroring their emotional pace, you create a relational environment where an avoidant can feel safe moving forward at their own speed. You disarm their fears of engulfment because you demonstrate that you are capable of moving with them, not against them. Over time, this builds the very trust that allows them to risk deeper intimacy. It strengthens you as well because it teaches you patience, empathy, and emotional resilience, the foundations not just of attracting love, but of sustaining it. When it comes to building attraction with an avoidantly attached person, or with anyone for that matter, the most powerful strategy is not about chasing, convincing, or proving your worth externally. It's about becoming someone whose life is so rich, so fulfilling, and so vibrant that your very existence draws others in without you having to force anything. True magnetism is intrinsic. It radiates from a deep sense of self-worth, purpose, and joy that is not dependent on the attention or validation of anyone else. For an avoidant, this is especially critical. They are highly sensitive to emotional neediness and the unspoken pressure that often accompanies it. They fear being needed more than they can provide. When you build a life that is full, dynamic, and meaningful on its own, you offer something profoundly attractive: presence without demand. You are not trying to extract anything from them. You are not trying to fill a void through them. You are already full, and that fullness is magnetic. Building this kind of life requires conscious effort and deep internal work. It means investing in passions, friendships, career goals, health, and personal development, not as a strategy to get the avoidant to chase you, but because you recognize that you are responsible for your own fulfillment. When your days are rich with purpose and your mind is engaged in growth, you naturally become less reactive, less anxious, and more grounded. This emotional stability is incredibly appealing to someone whose nervous system is wired to avoid emotional chaos. Moreover, when you are living a meaningful life, you project an aura of selectiveness. You are not available to anyone who does not add value, peace, or genuine connection to your already vibrant world. This reverses the typical dynamic where you might feel you are at the mercy of the avoidant's attention. Instead, you are in a position of quiet strength. You are no longer waiting for them to validate your worth. You are embodying it daily through the way you live, move, and think. This does not mean you suppress your feelings or pretend you don't care. True emotional power lies in the ability to care deeply while still prioritizing your own well-being. It means you can feel love, attraction, even longing, but you do not allow those feelings to drive you into self-abandonment. You honor your emotions without becoming enslaved by them. As you cultivate this magnetic life, something fascinating happens. The avoidant begins to feel a pull, not a pull of obligation or fear, but a pull of genuine admiration and curiosity. They see that you are not standing still, waiting for them. They see that you are moving forward with or without them, and because human beings are naturally drawn to energy, purpose, and vitality, they feel drawn to you in ways they cannot fully understand or articulate. Ultimately, the goal is not just to make an avoidant chase you. The goal is to become so rooted in your own value that you no longer need to chase anyone. You become the prize, not through games, but through the authenticity of a life well lived. And in doing so, you not only attract better relationships, you transform yourself in the process. One of the most powerful psychological skills you can master when dealing with an avoidantly attached person or in any relationship is the ability to respond rather than react. Reaction is automatic, emotional, and often unconscious. It's what happens when fear, anxiety, anger, or longing hijacks your behavior before you've even had time to think. Response, on the other hand, is deliberate. It's thoughtful. It's a product of emotional regulation and self-awareness, and it is exactly what disarms an avoidance defenses and allows a genuine connection to develop. When you react impulsively, especially from a place of insecurity or fear of abandonment, you reinforce the avoidant's worst fears about intimacy. That closeness will lead to emotional chaos, demands, and loss of freedom. If they withdraw and you immediately pursue, question, or plead, they feel trapped. If they go silent and you lash out in frustration, they feel validated in their belief that distance is safer than intimacy. Reaction hands them proof that closeness is dangerous. Responding is different. When you respond, you allow a space between stimulus and action. You feel your emotions, but you do not let them control your behavior. If an avoidant pulls away, you notice your own anxiety rising. But instead of rushing to close the gap, you pause, you breathe, you ground yourself in the knowledge that your worth is not determined by someone else's availability. Then you decide how to act from a place of strength rather than from fear. A response might be no action at all. It might mean giving them the space they are seeking without protest or panic. It might mean maintaining your usual routine, focusing on your own life, and allowing them to return when and if they are ready. A response is rooted in security. It communicates both to yourself and to them that you are not destabilized by their emotional fluctuations. This does not mean you suppress your feelings or pretend you don't care. Responding doesn't mean becoming cold or indifferent. It means holding your emotions with compassion, acknowledging them internally, and then choosing a course of action that reflects your values, not just your fears. You honor yourself while still respecting the reality of the other person's emotional needs and limitations. Over time, responding rather than reacting shifts the emotional dynamic profoundly. It builds your own self-trust. You prove to yourself that you can handle discomfort without collapsing into anxiety-driven behavior, and it builds trust with the avoidant too. They begin to associate you not with pressure and emotional volatility, but with safety and maturity. They feel less need to retreat because they sense that being close to you does not mean losing themselves. By the way, responding is an act of self-mastery. It is emotional leadership. It's the skill that turns fleeting attraction into lasting respect, and it is what ultimately allows true intimacy to grow, not just with an avoidant, but with anyone worthy of the depth and strength you have to offer. One of the most crucial principles when dealing with an avoidant or when building any healthy relationship is the understanding that true connection must be freely chosen. It cannot be forced, coaxed, or negotiated into existence. It must arise naturally from the other person's own desire, not from your effort to convince them. And this is even more important with avoidantly attached individuals who are hypersensitive to any feeling of being pressured, trapped, or obligated. Avoidants value autonomy above almost anything else. Their entire emotional defense system is built around protecting their independence because deep down they associate intimacy with danger. Danger of losing themselves, danger of being smothered, danger of being hurt. If they sense even a hint of emotional coercion, if they feel like they are being cornered into making a decision or feeling something they are not ready for, their instinct is to pull away even harder. That's why letting them choose you freely is not just respectful, it's absolutely necessary if you want anything genuine to develop. When you allow an avoidant the space to come to their own conclusions, you are sending a powerful message. You trust yourself enough not to chase, and you trust them enough to make their own decisions. You are not standing over them demanding answers, and you are not trying to manipulate outcomes by showing them how good you are or how much you care. You are rooted in your own value, and you know that the right connection will not require you to beg for it. This approach requires a deep shift in mindset. Instead of focusing on getting them to choose you, You focus on becoming the kind of person that someone would naturally be drawn to choose. You invest in your own growth, your own joy, your own life. You make yourself emotionally available, but not emotionally desperate. You become open, but not empty. You show up as a whole person, not a half person looking for completion. There is a paradox here. The less you try to make an avoidant choose you, the more space you create for them to actually want to. When someone feels free around you, free to be themselves, free to go at their own pace, free to say yes or no without fear of losing your affection, they are far more likely to feel safe enough to move closer. Safety, not pressure, is what unlocks the avoidance capacity for intimacy. It's important to remember you are not passively waiting, you are actively living. You are embodying your worth every single day. You are holding a space that says, I want you to choose me, but I do not need you to choose me in order to be whole. That subtle but profound difference changes everything. When love is freely chosen, it is strong, it is real, it is built on respect, not fear. And when you have the courage to let them choose you or not, you position yourself not just to attract their affection, but to build a relationship that is based on true emotional freedom and mutual desire rather than anxiety and obligation.